Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Heartland Mamas. I'm Marie Briel.
And I'm Heidi Henry, coming to you from two separate studios at the edge of the Great Red Divide. We are, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. You can find all of our previous works at Heartland Mamas, MAMAS.com. You can find our work on all podcast streaming platforms, on YouTube, and probably part of the Demcast USA network. I don't know why my brain stopped, Marie.
You know, it's funny
Except that
that
we went down.
it's funny that your brain stopped, Heidi, because right as I did that funny face before we started, I kind of had this little brain flap. And I don't know why. We've done this for 2 years now, but apparently it happens to everybody, so don't feel bad. You pulled it off great, girl.
You know
You're
what?
fine.
I think it's super cold in our studio, in this studio today, and I think my brain froze, and it's been frozen. I have a firmer frozen brain for days, weeks now.
How much did you get? A
So
ton of snow last night? Yesterday?
we got a we got a lot of snow, but it blew and drifted. So like my parking lot is clear where everybody comes to park at our farm, but my driveway is about drifted shut. So you know, and I mean over the tops of my pack boots up to my knees in places.
Yeah, we've
Shut,
had a
you know.
lot of snow here, like a lot of snow.
Yeah.
I feel like it's
It's
really
just it
bizarre.
snows like every couple of days we get a few more inches and a few more inches and a few more inches. And you know me, Marie, I love to go snowshoeing and cross country skiing and but it's too damn cold out. I like to do that when it's like 30 and snowy, not when it's 20 below zero wind chill factor and snowy.
Yeah, it has
So,
been a bit bitter. But I don't know if
yeah.
anything is as bitter as I am about sheriffs
Oh
and
yeah, well
sheriff
that's good.
organizations, Heidi. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure that I am saltiest about that. So, folks,
Well,
we have done some shows in the past that talk about racism. We just finished one, Rise of Right Wing Racism in Our Military. And we are going to continue our series by doing it with in our police forces. And our emphasis today is going to be on sheriffs. And there's some serious issues with the institution of sheriff to begin with,
yeah.
and it has ties all the way back to the beginning of the history of our country. It goes all the way back, well, to
Well, it goes
England.
to the feudal system. It goes back when, we all think about the sheriff's association or the sheriff as being Andy Griffith on the Andy Griffith show, right? So Andy
Totally.
Taylor, sheriff
Opie.
without a gun, he would take Opie, he'd take the law into his own hands and he'd make miracles with healing his community, right? I mean, he did everything from playing
Well, and
guitar with the Garlands to catching runaway prisoners and all kinds of things. And um, we think about the sheriff with that type of slant, but that's not how it is. It started out in the feudal system when in
kings
England when they would
needed.
send the sheriff out
Yep.
to collect taxes and to lean on the peasants and to make the peasants pay up or else you'll be drawn and quartered. I mean, they did some really horrible things to people who didn't pay their taxes. Donald Trump back then. When
Okay,
you think
maybe
of
we shouldn't be
tax
talking
dodgers,
about how the
it's
sheriff
lefty
system is bad. Maybe we should say that's a. They'd never do it to him because they're fans of his. But well, that
well,
comes
it
as a little bit
yeah,
later as our show continues on. Carry on, Heidi. You were saying yes, they
yeah.
came for the
Well,
feudal lords and they
so
collected the taxes and they ran errands and escorted prisoners and nothing.
yeah.
And then they slowly became the judge and jury as well over
Well,
time.
yeah, that's why they called them the justice of the peace because they were the person who persecuted you or chased you down, arrested you, judged you, and passed the sentence. That was when they would call them the justice of the peace. Remember, Andy Taylor had the sign that went from sheriff, and he'd flip it over, and it would say justice of the peace because he was judge, jury, and punisher. So,
And
but
that's
he
how
always
the
did it in
West
that
worked,
gentle way.
obviously. And you think about
Well, the
sheriffs. You
way
mentioned Opie Taylor. I think of Wyatt Earp. You know,
Oh, well, okay. So Wyatt Earp the problem with the story of Wyatt Earp is we understand Wyatt Earp from the Hollywood perspective, the Wild West myth, and the reality of what it took to be a lawman back in the time when you might be the only law within 600 miles and or larger or 1,000 miles, and when we had territories west of the Mississippi. So that, you know, and the thing, and maybe one day we'll unroll the Wild West myth and what the truth and stuff about Wyatt Earp was, but I think more of what's happened that we see in this side of the Mississippi and now throughout the United States is when our sheriff's departments became sheriff department, not so much the magistrate. It was started to chase runaway slaves, and we talk about that in policing. Modern day policing was rooted in the slave industry, okay, in the keeping of human beings to work your land. And we also have to remember that only 5% of Southerners at the beginning of the Civil War actually owned slaves. They got rich people got poor people to fight for them for that right. And the failure and the abandonment of Reconstruction under Andrew Jackson is Andrew Johnson. Yeah. Is the reason that we have the indentured thought process in the sheriff's department right now. Okay. I mean, it all goes right back to that, because before the Civil War, it was to chase down the slaves and capture them and bring them back. And after the Civil War, it was to enforce Jim Crow era. You're black, therefore you're not white, therefore you are a slave, even though
And
we've
Heidi,
given up slavery.
right there, you brought us up to the 1940s, and you brought us to the rise of what we're talking
Oh,
about today is this
yeah.
constitutional sheriff. This because now think about the structure of the
Right.
sheriff, just like Heidi was talking
Yeah.
about. Whether you're out west and you have a large territory in a small department and you may be the only one, or whether you're in an urban area and you're a county sheriff, each department has different needs and different roles and responsibilities, right?
Right.
They oversee the jail system, the which can have, and a lot of these can have financial benefits too. But remember, these guys are all elected, and there isn't a department of sheriffs in the state of Illinois that they all have to report to or that anyone
We need a
oversees,
nope.
because each sheriff is an elected official. So, we've
Yeah.
talked before about the prison system. We talked about the for profit prison system and how that all developed through sheriff's offices down in Louisiana. And
Yep.
now Heidi brought us up to Jim Crow era segregation. And right around that time, when they declared, you no longer can be segregated, that we were going to be an integrated society,
Yeah.
the sheriffs took it upon themselves to declare that since they were elected, and technically the definition is that the highest elect, they can. It's not the definition. I can't think of what it is off the top of my head. See, I'm having a brain fart too today. It is the belief, the understanding that they are, like Heidi said, the peace officer, the judge, the jury, the executioner. That was built in there. They're chosen by the people. They feed on that when running for office and feed
Right.
on that narrative.
Right. Right.
And there's no one, as we said, who can oversee these
No.
guys. And they decided that they weren't going to enforce integration, that they were going to ignore violations of civil liberties, that they would punish children and black men and black women, and at every given opportunity, reinforcing, the Jim Crow laws. And so the rise thereof came from those southern counties where that was important. And so that mentality has stuck, and not the slave mentality necessarily, but the I'm the final say. There's no
Right.
one
I'm the
higher than I am
in the
in this.
jury, and I
Yes.
decide. And and they've brought their as law enforcement has evolved and the population has grown, they've brought in their state's attorneys to help them enforce these laws, and we're going to do that on another show. But what we've seen is that the stuff that started in the southeast United States before the Civil War, in order to enforce slave runaways to come back, to come back, and you see it with old timey, old brother, where art thou, where they're pursuing them with bloodhounds, which were bred to chase down slaves and then runaway prisoners, and you see them chasing with dogs these
Also,
runaways.
to instill terror and fear. Remember, everything that was done, it was not only the dogs, but the whole point behind it was to instill fear and terror so that they wouldn't be subjected to the evils of the white men.
Well, and the fear and the terror to prevent them from doing anything like that again, from running away again,
Yep.
from doing whatever again, from drinking out of the wrong water fountain to being in a sundown town after dark. The fear and terror that they would instill with that. And the thing is Marie, as we've evolved as a country, and even after the civil rights era, we have to find a new boogeyman, right, for the sheriff to prosecute or to look for in order to maintain or retain or achieve his job goals, is being elected the sheriff. Now, I know my county sheriff, who we're in different parties, but I think he's a heck of a good guy. And I think he's, in LaSalle County, I think he does a really good job. But we do have neighboring sheriffs, not just in Illinois, but across the United States, that are part of real conservative, right-wing affiliated sheriff's association.
And those are your
Marie,
constitutional sheriffs, Heidi. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure our listeners, you're right on. Keep that thought, girl. Those are our constitutional sheriffs. So there are a couple of organizations that were founded. If you all recall our episode from a little bit ago, we did the Peacekeepers. Well, the same delightful fellow, Richard Mack, also founded CESPA, which I consider cesspool, but it is the Constitutional Officers Sheriff Police Association. So it is predominantly focused on sheriffs. Over 10% of sheriffs across the nation are a part of this. 10% of sheriff counties are a part of this organization. And it reinforces exactly what Heidi was saying, that the sheriff gets to decide whatever the sheriff wants, and that's the way it is. And that brings us to the mask orders, like you were talking about.
Oh my God, the mask orders! We've seen it in our local counties, right? The spotty enforcement, and usually the enforcement of the mask order by the local sheriff's department, and I don't care what sheriff's department you're in, depends on who you're connected to, and we all know that that's the truth. And the other thing that we saw with that, and Marie, I'm gonna change your 10% here, because of the 3,081 elective sheriffs in the USA, over a third have a connection to the CSPA thing or to other right-wing groups.
Wow, you're right. And this is my quote. Mine was from CSPA, so 20% from the other organizations out there, like F.A.I.R, which is the Federation of American Immigration Reform, and the other organizations.
Which is the modern day Jim Crow.
These sheriffs are the same ones that are saying you can't provide women health care, reproductive health care in their counties. These are the sanctuary dudes, right? We don't have, our sheriff is not like this, but we got a county board member who wants to declare Will County a sanctuary county for guns. Well, these sheriffs can do that. They will choose what laws to enforce and what laws not to enforce.
Murray, and I just want to address the sanctuary city for a frickin' handgun for an object. I mean, are we going to have a sanctuary city for cell phones or lipstick, in the future? Because that is a inanimate object. Why in the world does it have to have sanctuary from anything? We have the Second Amendment already that gives people the right to keep and bear arms. why the hell, except that this sanctuary city, sanctuary county, which LaSalle County, the county I'm in, had this come up for a vote, and passed it. Why do you need that? Well, this is how the right wing, the far right, the alt right, integrates or embeds itself within our law enforcement
I
communities.
have the
This
best
is how
partner,
they do it.
folks. She's spot on. And so here's a part of it. We know that there is corruption because the for profit prison industry is 1/7 of the total revenue of the United States. We know that the
Right.
largest for profit
517.
prison company is all because of a sheriff's department down in Louisiana. It's a cycle.
Yep.
And because they're elected, they have benefits of elected officials with no oversight. They are
Nope.
supposed to be the oversight.
Nope.
So they can take these laws, they can take
Yep.
and bend these, and to have 1/3 filter into these right wing, anti individual rights groups
Right.
is kind of terrifying. You know,
It
I
really
mean,
is.
we think about like in 1980 or in 2018, Jeff Sessions talked to the sheriff's
Oh
convention.
my
And
God.
in the sheriff's convention, I kid you not, I want to make
This is
sure I
what he
nail this,
said.
okay? This is,
I have it written down too, Murray, and I can't wait for you all to hear this because it just irritated me so much.
oh, pickles. Did I lose it? Hang on, hang on, hang on. All right, I must have lost it right there. Sugar Puff, I'm getting it, I'm getting it, I'm
Okay.
getting it. Bear with me. Anyway, the point being that Heidi just made was that right wing groups will recruit. We talked about this in our military show. They will recruit inside sheriff's offices, inside
With
police
the most
forces, inside security
benign
companies, and they
sounding
also
thing.
and they do the opposite. They train and then send them into police forces. So
Well,
young kids who want to become sheriffs, they twist and manipulate into this hatred and this fake idea and mythology that we talked about, and they begin their practice as a cadet and as they work their
well,
way up the ranks.
Jeff Sessions said in 2019 at the Sheriff's Association that this is Anglo American law enforcement. Is that the quote you were
I
looking
found the
for?
quote. Yep. The
Meaning
office of
white,
sheriff.
white.
This is what he said. The office of sheriff is a critical part of the Anglo American heritage of
Anglo
law
American.
enforcement. And we must
And
never
it's white
erode this
people.
historic office. Right, that's it. Jeff Sessions is like the racist Keebler elf. Like, if he had an alternate personality, if there were multiple personalities of the Keebler elf, Jeff Sessions would be the evil one. And
Well, and further in that statement, he said that small town, these are the small town lawmen, and they're not small town, that has to take law matters into his own hands. Meaning, when you're white, you get to do whatever you want and enforce
which
whatever laws you want. And it
absolutely,
just
and they
pisses
work
me
in
off so
tandem
bad.
with
Yeah,
the right wing, with the Republican Party, with Republican legislatures. And that's a part of what our show series is about, is to show the
Murray.
true infiltration of white supremacy into our fabric. The
Yeah,
GOP, it's not the national GOP, the senators and the Congress people who, some of them, of course, are
it is.
nuts. Yes, they are, but that are as vehement, but it is the local. It is the state level
Yeah.
that is so vicious and angry and divided. And so,
Marie, okay. So you and I were in Chicago the day that Sheriff's Association meeting happened down at McCormick Place. We were in Chicago that day, remember?
oh,
You
we
you
were.
know because you had a Russian connection that day. And Sessions flew in on Marine One with Donald Trump to speak to this organization. And who was there? But one of the most hateful bigots on the planet, John
David Clark?
Catanzaro, who's in charge.
Oh, sorry.
Well, David Clark was there. David Clark was there. And so was Joe Arapio or
Joe
whatever his name was.
Arpaio.
Arpaio.
So is our
But John
buddy in
Catanzaro,
Michigan, the sheriff in Michigan, Leaf. Darleaf,
Yeah.
who stood on the
Who didn't?
stage with the people who tried to carry out the assassination of the governor, and who also
Yeah.
stood on stage at the bus tour Women for Trump. Don't you love how this all just
It
connects?
all goes together because
It does.
that man had no problem with them wanting to kidnap, try and execute Governor Whitmer from Michigan because he thought the mask mandates were overstepping her lines. Let's not
Because
disrespect
he
people.
believed that he was the enforcer of the Constitution that he believed. And we all
Just
know
the
that's
parts of the
crap.
Constitution. Just the parts of the Constitution he believes in because some of
Right,
the Constitution
right.
he doesn't believe
Can
in, and
I
he's
ask how
very.
this works? You know me. I'm a little weird, uh, a little awkward sometimes, but
Yeah,
logic is kind of
me too.
important for me. So,
Yeah,
if I'm the sheriff of
yeah,
Barry County, like Mister Crazy Pants Darleaf is up there, and
yeah.
I believe that the mandate is unenforceable, and I'm rah-rahing these militant white supremacists who are going to go attempt to kidnap the governor like 3 days later.
And try and execute.
Right, right. Kidnap and execute. Okay, so maybe in his county, he's tight, but that doesn't give him say over the whole state. So where is that psychological leap? You
Just
know,
wondering
where does that
how
happen
he's
inside of their
you know.
minds?
And the fact, well, I said, I wonder who's holding his leash, but the fact is nobody's holding his leash, and that's why he can do this and not lose his job because he's elected. The only way that man can lose his job is in the next election cycle. There's no oversight board for any of this shit. So you can do anything you want as a sheriff, and there's nobody you have to answer to except the voters the next cycle.
Oh, but here's a great thing, Heidi. You just bring me to the wonderful part about cesspool. I mean, CSPOA. Cesspool is not only the sheriff's organization, but they're great during election season. They do
Yes.
this. Vet
Money,
your
money, money,
sheriff.
money, money, money,
No,
money.
no, no. They do better than that. They do
Yeah.
vet your sheriff. A huge push in counties across the country to their questions
Ah,
designed to
yep.
reinforce heteronormative white cis
Anglo-Saxon law enforcement.
masculinity. Seriously, these questions are designed. Are do you feel protected? Does your sheriff protect you? And they're literally the advocate it's bananas, but they have an extremely infectious reach, which is why when you put their infectious reach and the amount of grassroots work that they do in combination with the message that they send and the prison system, which
Yeah.
continues to pump money in, and the benefits from being an elected official, it's virtually impossible to have a sheriff change hands. And when you finally
Right.
do, you know, you hope that you get it right because it's like any elected official, which I'm honestly thinking that it may not be a bad idea to just remove sheriff's departments. You know, I don't see some maybe some areas, but in a lot of places you don't really need them.
Well, and I look at well, any unincorporated area, and I live in an unincorporated area. I'm dependent on our local sheriff's department, which helped me round up my horses the other day when they had a jailbreak, for anything that I need. And the sheriff's department is invaluable in the area I live in because I don't live in a residential area. I live out in the middle of nowhere. So I look at that and I think of all the good and wonderful things the sheriff's department has done for my community. But then I look at neighboring counties where you have sheriffs that are tightly connected to FAIR and to other organizations like CSPOA.
Cesspool, yep, cesspool.
And 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 now cesspool is more actually the southwestern United States. It's really ingrained out there because it's so anti-immigrant and the
Fair
thing
has
is that a lot of people
members out there, yeah.
fair fair that's what I meant is fair.
84%. 80, no, I'm sorry, 87% of all sheriffs in the country out of all 4,000, however many counties we have, are white males. Okay.
White males, yeah.
You know,
And the thing,
that's.
the danger with having people affiliated with FAIR and CESPA especially in the southwestern United States, is you have huge populations of indigenous people and people with biracial and multiracial heritage that may look like they're an illegal alien, so you got to shake them down. And remember, we talk a lot about racial profiling. Well, that's kind of FAIR in a nutshell. That's kind of CSPA in a nutshell, because we're not all Anglo-Saxons. Sorry. But I wanted to go back a little bit, because I want to talk a little bit about how when you and I were in Chicago, when Marine One came in with Trump and Sessions on it, because not only did we have every sheriff in the country that hit the news for all the wrong reasons, but you had John Catanzara there as one of the featured speakers, and he is the president of the FOP in Chicago. And the problem with, and Marie and I are huge union supporters, and law enforcement does need a union, right? They really do, just like any working body of people. But when he has got ties to the Proud Boys, and he's got ties with the Boogaloo Boys, and he's got ties with, who is that guy that started CSPA?
Richard Mack, Sheriff Mack.
Who has ties to the
Sheriff Joe, Sheriff David Clark. There's so many delightful sheriffs all over the country to get to know. Better know your sheriff.
They have ties to these alt-right, Constitution denying, wrapping themselves up in the flag and in racism,
power tripping
kind of organization. Yeah, and it's the every problem can be solved with a bigger gun sort of thing, right? And we have to remember that we can't look at law enforcement with these rose-colored glasses any longer. I mean, today we're focusing on sheriff's departments, but we know even in our local law enforcement that they've got connections to these alt-right, QAnon.
And like you said, Heidi, even if you don't have a sheriff, like my sheriff is not that way. Will County Sheriff Mike Kelly, he is not a member or affiliated with any of those. He's a Democrat. Not that means anything. You could be a white supremacist Democrat.
He's not a flaming nutbag.
Right. But that doesn't mean that they're deputies and those people that they hire for their prison guards and all that fall into that system are not encouraged, incited, placed, or recruited for these far-right organizations.
Well, in Murray, most sheriff's departments around me have a governing board within them that helps bring in police officers. They have to go through a vetting through these boards, and then they're cleared, and then they're hired. Well, one sheriff in an adjoining county to my county has decided that that's not what he wants to do, and he just brings whoever he wants in, and he's got ties to F.A.I.R. I'm just saying, the rules go out the window when you elect somebody who doesn't think the rules apply to them.
And you're right, Heidi. I think sheriffs are important in a lot of areas that aren't more urban. You're 100% right, and there is a need, but we need some sort of standards, I think, or something, because it all plays into each other. This narrative of white supremacy, this myth of the wild west, the myth of white is right, white can do no wrong, all of these things play on top of each other and create the situation that we have today. And organizations like F.A.I.R, like CSPOA, all do extraordinary damage by spreading and proliferating. Well, maybe we'll get them listed as hate groups. I wonder how that would go over.
Well, and here's the thing, Marie, is that we didn't talk about the incidences of provable police brutality within these organizations or within sheriff's departments that are affiliated with these organizations. And yet, you and I saw the evidence as we were researching for today, and we're going to talk about that in another show. But we do know that sheriff's departments affiliated, deputies, law enforcement affiliated with these other groups have a higher incidence of police brutality, provable police brutality, and a higher incidence of racial brutality. And and I'm going to point out Iowa right now. 3% of the people that live in Iowa, 3% only of the people that live in Iowa are not white. 3%. That's really low. That's a really white state, right?
Iowa's
But
pretty white.
28% of the people incarcerated in Iowa are not white.
But
28%.
remember, we
So,
make money for the beds that are full. Otherwise, it costs us money. So we have to keep putting people in
well,
jail. So we create a school to prison pipeline. And that's how we keep making money. And the more money I make, the more donations I get for my campaign, the more I can stay in power.
yeah. I and that's exactly right. It's when we create a financial benefit from arresting people and incarcerating people, that's a huge problem. And Illinois just passed this huge police reform bill, and it's not a defund bill. It is a police accountability bill,
My
making sure
senator
that they
didn't
have
vote for
their.
it,
Neither did mine.
but mine's a
So
Democrat.
and mine's a Republican, and I expect her to do as little as she possibly can because she's been a
Right.
do-nothing person her entire
Well,
career.
I mine
That's
mine
why I
is
vote
mine is
against
not
her.
actually a
But
Democrat. She's really not a Democrat either, but it's okay.
well, I know, and you have a bunch of dinos in
I do.
office out by you,
Frickin' Will County is the
Democrat
worst.
name only. But I have to tell you that when we think about police reform or police accountability, and why I say provable police brutality, Murray, is that until everybody has a body cam on, you cannot prove or disprove police brutality, right? Except for eyewitnesses, which could be tainted either way. And until people started filming Laquan yeah, well, I can't say it, but until
Quan
people
McDonald.
were filming George Floyd, yeah, thank you. Until people filmed that, we didn't believe. It's not that we didn't believe it, but we couldn't see it with our own eyes. And part of this accountability bill that we just passed was the body cameras always on, because police brutality claims, true or false, cost us millions and millions of dollars in the state of Illinois every year.
From a
Every year.
financial
And they
perspective alone, you're spot on,
yeah,
Heidi. I mean, I know that the prison system brings a lot of money in, but like the cost of liable lawsuits,
right.
damage is insane.
And now, here's the thing, that these body cameras will prove that it did or did not happen, right? And also, I think it will keep some officers, because most of them are wonderful people, but some that aren't need to have some accountability, a lot of accountability. But these body cams are going to keep them from either turning them off because you'll get a fine, or not having them at all, which is punishable also. But it's going to keep them, I think, have them think a little harder about what they're doing, because we all saw recently the little girl that was maced, pepper sprayed, as she was loaded into a car,
Yeah,
and
having a
and
mental issue.
that's a whole other topic. I just wonder if she was a little white girl. I know the same thing wouldn't have happened to her, and I'm
No,
glad
it
somebody
wouldn't.
caught it on tape. But
And again, it's up
I
to
think
us to
about
keep
these.
our people
Well,
on their toes. And with our sheriffs,
right.
we need to make sure that we recruit good people and that we expose things and who
We
your sheriff
do.
really is.
Well, and it's really important to know, yeah, who you're hiring, and what they stand for, because there are so many things that go into making a good law enforcement officer. But white supremacy and connection to alt-right groups should not ever be part of your sheriff's department, of any law enforcement department.
Nope.
And it's up to us as the electorate to vet our and find this to be distasteful, to be something that is a deal breaker for elections.
And Heidi, you're
I
right
think,
on. The only way that we are ever going to stop the abuses within sheriff's departments, is by shedding light on them, which we are going to keep doing in our series, by shedding light on these cockroachy companies like these organizations like Cesspool and F.A.I.R, and by voting, by making sure voters are aware, because
And
there's no one who can, the governor can't come in and kick them out. Like, it's up to
no,
us. So we
and,
have to
and
do it.
we need to understand that when they have connections to the alt-right, that they infiltrate them in the most benign looking ways through these Second Amendment sanctuary counties. That's a pathway in through or protests or gatherings to celebrate the thin blue line or back the badge. Those are always nowadays. It didn't used to be like this. Those are also QAnon recruiting tactics for the QAnon to infiltrate and bring officers and citizens that are in the area into the fold so that they can spread their disinformation. That's the whole goal, is to grow their numbers larger. And we have to guard ourselves that we look through and past these ways of infiltrating our law enforcement agencies and make sure that our sheriffs and heads of departments are smarter than that they don't fall for it, that they don't fall for the pressure of becoming part of CSPA or part of F.A.I.R or part of any of the other things that are. I mean, I get calls all the time to donate to the Sheriff's Association. Well, I know that the Sheriff's Association that calls my house for donations, I know that they have ties to the alt-right. I'm not giving them a dime. If I want to make a donation to the local sheriff's department, I'll take it down there and give it to them. But heck, I do that. I support them every damn day with my tax dollars. My property taxes are going to be due soon, so I'm already paying my share. I sent something nice over to the department for helping me catch my errant horses. Sent a
That's
nice little
very
note
good.
and
So,
gave
see,
him a
not
shout
all
out
sheriffs
on
are bad,
Facebook.
not all police forces are bad, but this is something that we really
Oh,
need to make sure we stay on top of and that everyone is aware of. So, if you want to help us spread this message, please like, subscribe, and share. Tell your friends and family. We are on every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 o'clock live, unless it's something special. And you can catch all of our previous episodes at Heartland Mamas.
mamas.com, all podcast streaming platforms, and YouTube if you want to see Murray's funny faces. Proudly part of the Dumbcast USA network. And Tom Templeton, my sheriff, I didn't say enough good things about you, but thank you for helping me catch my horses the other day. They were very naughty that day, and they never do that. They don't run amok. Anyway, see you later, everybody. Take care
Thank
now.
you.
Bye-bye.
See you Thursday. Bye bye.